Hello and welcome to the BYU Family History Library webinar series. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Megan Smith and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You are welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar is on October 22nd with James Tanner. He will be giving a presentation about using AI to translate handwritten documents. If you would like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Richard Miller, who will be talking about Goldie May as a newspaper finding aid. Before we begin, here's a little bit about our speaker. Richard Miller is the developer of a genealogy app called Goldie May. He previously worked in technology roles at 3 genealogy companies, but only afterwards started doing his own family history research, which opened his eyes. He's building Goldie May to be the app he wants for his own research and hopes it will be useful to many others as well. If Richard is ready, we'll turn the time over to him.
Okay, thank you so much, Megan. Okay, I think I'm here. All right, thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time. It's great to be back here. I'm wearing my BYU sweatshirt since the hosting sponsoring university is having its homecoming week. So this is a fun week to be here. I am grateful to talk to you today about newspapers. I'll talk to you about why newspapers are valuable, how Goldie May might be able to help you with finding them. And secondarily, I'll touch a little bit on how AI might help you with newspapers. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can jump right in. I have goldiemay.com pulled up. So if you are brand new to Goldie May, I thought I'd spend 1 minute on telling you what it is. It is genealogy research software. It doesn't do anything with photos. It doesn't have a tree. It's not intended to replace the other genealogy software you use, but hopefully it replaces the sticky notes around your monitor and the notepads on your desk and anywhere else that you're using your pad and paper and pencil to figure out something about genealogy. So if you go to goldiemay.com, you can click install now in your browser. This needs to be on a computer, not a phone or iPad. And then you'll find an add to Chrome button. This works also on Firefox and other browsers. And then once you've added this to your browser, the black G at the top right will have your Goldie May icon, which you can open with a click. You'll sign in with your family search account, which is free if you don't already have one. And then you're off to the races to use Goldie May. The intention is to help you stay organized in your research and also visualize some of the problems you might want to sort out in your research. So if we're talking about newspapers tonight, you won't find any newspaper button on the homepage, right? But newspapers as a feature in Goldie May are threaded throughout it. So I'll show you several of those, hoping that helps you. But first, let me just point out that what newspapers would we like to look at? Now, one that I like newspapers for is obituaries. That's a very obvious one. And we, to some degree, still use newspapers online nowadays for obituaries. But there are many other reasons you might want to find a newspaper article for historical genealogical reasons. Now, I thought about this. Yeah, obituaries are great. It's really fun for me to find what I would call social media posts. This is probably the equivalent of Facebook or something from 50, 100 years ago, where in the absence of actual social media, it's pretty common, especially in the smaller towns, as you've probably seen, to write little things about who was visiting whom that day, who had family members in town. And so I find it pretty fun, especially in the smaller locations, to read the news of that era, finding my ancestors and seeing what they were up to day to day. I almost wish I knew what food they were eating that day because I enjoy that part of it too, but they haven't mentioned a lot about their dinner menu that night. So one other question I thought was, okay, what if I asked AI to help me with among newspaper articles that can be used for genealogy, what other types of articles are valuable? And so I did this in Claude, and it gave me back several types of records that might be useful. Vital events, legal and property notices where someone buys and sells a property, and that might mention family members at the time of the purchase. And then as you look through this list, you would see others. When someone is immigrates or is naturalized, and so on. There are several options. So I found this a way by asking Claude as an AI product to just help me think more about genealogy. What do I want to be looking at and why this might help me? So, okay, with that in mind, I will jump into a family member that I want to work on as a practice. So I'm going to open up my search for Leonard Wilson, and I want to open up him here. And I want to start a new project looking for Leonard James Wilson's mother. And in Family Search, he does have his mother listed here, Sarah Ann, but we really know so little about her, and I'd like to find out more. So for the purposes of research tonight, I'll make this my project. Okay, so I'll come over here to Leonard James Wilson. I'll say, who is Leonard Wilson's mother? And I'm saving that person ID I copied here, often called a PID, and I'll paste that into the people place here and click add person. If you missed it, I could also, instead of copying and pasting, while I am looking at someone from Family Search Tree, you'll notice that it offers a link down here to directly add this person to your project. So that's one option too. Click that, Leonard appears here, and now it has different details from his family as pulled over from the Family Search Tree. So, okay, we know our task is to look for Leonard Wilson's mother, and just to keep me focused on this and I guess consolidating or giving a boundary to this project so it doesn't seem overwhelming, I might add a note here that says that this project is complete when I've done exhaustive research for the newspapers that might mention Leonard's mother. So this is a lot of typing to do, right? So this is the point at which I find it really helpful to use AI. And so I'm going to open up the program that I use called Super Whisper. There are a few of these types of things that you could use. This is one that has options for both transcription only on your computer, where the speech doesn't leave your computer and is only processed locally, or you can have it processed in the cloud, which is, a touch slower, but might have better quality. So let me show you what that looks like. I could push a keyboard shortcut here, and I'm now talking to the AI, right? I'm going to escape this while I talk because I don't want to have to pick up this text. Here, I'll give it the real note we're going to put in. This project is complete when I have done an exhaustive search for newspapers that might mention Leonard's mother. All right, so it looks like it got that entirely right, and I've saved it. So I find this very helpful for typing, where no matter how fast you can type, it can often be faster to transcribe text into a note or anywhere you want in your programs. So that's one option. Okay, so we have our project set up. We're going to be looking for Leonard Wilson. Now, as is always a good idea, we should go back and double check the sources we already have. It's often true that the answer to your question is already present in your research, but you or someone just hasn't found it yet. So I could scroll down to about the era 1921 when Leonard passed away. And incidentally, yeah, let's pretend you don't see it here, but there are a couple of newspapers here with obituaries. So we could start from fresh, and for the sake of our presentation tonight, pretend that those aren't there. But the idea is here, yes, you could go through and look through these records. Now, if I'm looking for obituaries in newspapers in 1921, this is in Iowa, I could look through the details of Family Search. I could alternatively look on the right side in Goldie May and see, okay, he died in 14 May 1921 in Madison County, Iowa, United States. So this is one place that I could start looking for newspapers. I could click on a location and open up a link to the Family Search Wiki. This is, of course, something I could do separately by opening up the Family Search Wiki manually and typing in Madison County, Iowa, but this is one way to get to it sooner. And so there, I could just look on page for newspapers, and here are a few newspapers that I will want to be checking as options, right? Now, Above here, you probably notice this task list, and I could quickly add to tasks such as the names of things. I could type in Tuna Digital, or I could transcribe it with AI, right? Type in the things I want to be searching. But one alternative is to right click on any link and choose Goldie May and add link to tasks. And this will add that title and URL for that particular newspaper directly to the task list. And so that's a pretty fast way to add a few things all in a row. And this gives me a chance to be very exhaustive with the newspapers that I've just found on this wiki page and start to build my plan for what research I'm going to do on newspapers. Now, one other place that I want to show you is that there is a Goldie May feature called the catalog. This I'm intending to be somewhat like Kayak for travel, where if you are flying to Salt Lake City for Roots Tech, hopefully this March, and I hope to see you there, from wherever you are, then you might put into Kayak your location, Salt Lake City, and then you find all the different flight options there. And that's probably far more likely to use something like that than separately going to delta.com, America Airlines, Southwest. You don't do that separately, right? So I'm hoping to give you that same experience in this catalog where you could go to the Goldie May catalog and type in any location. So I'll put in here, Madison County, Iowa. And this will tell you for the collections that I have reported from Goldie May, there are Ancestry Genealogy Bank newspaper storied options here. These are all newspapers at the county level in the Goldie May catalog. More will come, but in the meantime, you could choose that, yeah, I only want newspapers, and these are my options. So again, I could be looking through these different Iowa records and see what's helpful to me. If I go to the state level, then yeah, the range of records available here is much broader because these are not just newspapers, they're for all types of records. So I could come down here and choose newspapers only, filter down to newspapers, and now I could come up here and choose, which one do I want to use to look for newspapers. You may have heard a lot of these, American Ancestors, et cetera. One that's a little less known. Okay, let's say the big three newspaper sites, at least for the United States on newspapers, would be Genealogy Bank and newspapers.com, owned by Ancestry, and Storied. And Storied was previously called Newspaper Archive. Those are the big three commercial options. The fourth very large one is Chronicling America, which is the government-run collection of a lot of newspapers. Those are the big four. And then maybe if you add on a fifth, if you're reading Family Tree magazine about top newspaper records, they often include Fulton History. And this one's less well known, but if I filter down to Fulton History in Iowa, I may not find something there, but I would often find them in New York where Fulton History is based. It's a gentleman who is scanning lots of newspaper articles from home and posting them online. So if you find any of these in your county, there's a good chance that those would be really good for you. In this case, if I open up those, it will ask you to log in with your Fulton History, and then you can, let me re-click that to jump you right there. So yes, now you'll be seeing the Moore's Rural New Yorker newspapers, and you could jump into these pages and see if there's something there. So I think those generally cover some of the top 5 newspaper options online for the United States in particular. They're not limited to the United States. If I go to something like Storied, and they have a lot of countries overseas, so you'd find Australia, you'd find Iceland, you'd find England, etc. There are a lot of options if I choose Storied and newspapers. So you'd want to check that out too. Here's a bunch of Australia newspapers. Now, having mentioned those 5 options, that's not to say that's where all the newspapers are. There are many more that are not printed, for one, and there are many more that are just scattered among different places, right? So we saw one of those in my project, where if I come into my project and we'll go into my Who is Leonard Wilson's Mother, this Winterset Madisonian is one that is specific. The Winterset is the county seat for Madison County, Iowa. So this is a pretty good spot for me to be looking for Leonard Wilson and seeing if we find an article about him. So let's do this, see what we find here. And I do come into this search blind, not having done this search before, and don't see them, mentioned immediately. But for purposes of demonstration, let me show you that as you find someone, suppose that our Leonard Wilson is related to Jane Wilson, this is where you might also want to use the screenshot feature on Goldie May. So you can right click and, okay, this is a good time to demonstrate. Sometimes if you are directly on an image, it will not pick up that screenshot like this. If it doesn't, you might come up above the image in this white area of the page, right click there, take a screenshot, and then bring your cursor with the crosshairs, and you're going to drag a box over that portion of the screen, and that will drop it into your research log. So now if I go in the Goldie May research log over to this page, you will find those screenshots that I've taken. It's kept the URL, the title. It made a citation for this as a Goldie May Pro feature. And so I can now be looking at this as part of my research. You may have heard me talk about this before, but I am not intending Goldie May to keep the forever location of your research, in the sense that there's probably a tree you already use. It might be Family Search, or it might be Ancestry, or it might be a desktop product that you're using for your tree. But I'm hoping Goldie May is a really great way to keep this organized while you sort out all the different details about who is in your family and what helps you answer those questions. And then once you've found that, then I would encourage you to go over to your tree of choice and add these as sources. That this is the link, here's my citation, here's the image, and you'll go and put those into the tree that helps you keep it long-term. So if you're new to Goldie May, these projects are all stored in the cloud. So you are signed in with your Family Search account. If you sign out and then go elsewhere and sign in, all your research is right there. If you come back to your own research a week later, then you have it right in front of you to get oriented with it, to make sure you remember what you were last working on. And it's things like this that help you do that, by saying, yes, I liked this. This was helpful. Or no, I looked in a place that I intended to find my person, but he was not there in that image. And so I would put this as a negative result, meaning it was the absence of person. And I want to record that I looked there, but the person was not found there. So that's useful as well. Your log can accumulate over time, and you could keep all of your newspaper articles listed here. And I found, for me, that's a really fun way to see a lot of research over time. Now, one other feature you have maybe seen before is the canvas. This is taking the same screenshot you previously added to your research log and dropping it into more of a visual view. And so as you accumulate your newspaper articles here, this might be where you want to pull in the pen tool, and you're going to put in here that, yes, I see mention of the person here, and maybe over here, supposing those are two articles. You might want to also connect these. So if you draw a line, you can connect that arrow to the image on both sides like this. And then as you then move this around, the line moves with it. So this is a way to really kind of draw out yarn on the wall to connect all the articles together and figure out what you want to sort out on this. Okay, so those are major ways so far that you could be looking for the newspaper articles as they appear in major options, some of which are available through the Goldie May tools. Now, what if you don't find the newspaper articles you're looking for? One way you might want to go looking for this is to go to Chronicling America, which is the big government website that is Chronicling. I think I spelled that right. Chronicling America. I spelled that wrong. You would go to Chronicling America, Library of Congress, and the listing that appears inside of Goldie May is the digitized titles. But there is a much larger collection of the undigitized titles that is across all the states for all types of ethnicities and languages, etc. So you might want to also be checking here, and you could be looking in the non-digital ones, and it might pull up exactly where in a certain city or county library you might find a paper copy of a newspaper. And so you may need to go or send someone on your behalf to go look in that location and get a copy of that physical that physical document. So this is again still usable in any of the Goldie May features as far as organizing your work. So suppose you want to come into just clicking on any of these here. If I am looking at this Nebraska web document and I think I can only find it in person, then I might want to add this to my listed tasks, and I could come here and add this as a task to my task list. And then I might say here that, go in person. And this is something that I need to go to visit in person. And that's my part of my project or part of my research to go through this. So this is how I would be able to make my plan. What's the lowest hanging fruit would be any of the records I can find online. So that might look like any of the subscriptions to which I have access. The digital Chronicling America ones are free. You can find different options online from time to time on deals, or perhaps you already have a subscription. Or if you go into the BYU Family History Library or a Family Search Center near you, there's a good chance you would have access to the subscriptions of the newspaper art services that I've mentioned, plus some of the more commercial, even university or academic type collections that you might want to check out. So that would be one way to look at that too. And then one other thing I wanted to just look at with you would be to look at the subway map. Now, this is a feature you may or may not have seen before, but this is a timeline tool through the Goldie May feature of the Goldie May tool that lets you see the progression of someone's life over time. So this has pulled up Leonard James Wilson from the Family Search ID, and it shows the places he lived and the years of his life over time. And generally in a subway map, you would see kind of a downward progression over time, that he first was born in York, Ontario, Canada, and then he moved to Illinois, Iowa, etc. And you'll see that in this Iowa era, he was living in 3 counties. And so it was Adair and then Polk and then Madison, then back to Polk. And you see the progression of that over time. This is where Goldie May can put newspapers directly into context here. So if I click collection hints, the single dots are censuses, but the pill-shaped lines are newspapers. So the idea here is that it is extending. Okay, so let me explain this. He's here known to be in Polk County, Iowa at age 47 because his child Clarence was born then and there. And the next data point we have on the family search tree is at age 50, 3 years later, in Madison, Iowa, as a residence, probably from a census because it's 1880. So there's this period of 3 years during which we don't know where he was. So we don't know when during those 3 years he moved between Polk and Madison County. So the newspaper line here extends as far as 1880, hoping to guess that if he stayed in Polk County, Iowa, all the way up until 1880, we might find him in a newspaper during that time period. So this is a newspaper finding aid to help you find that for the given period during which he might be in that county, these are the newspapers that ran at that time and place and that he might appear in. And on the side, you'll see an icon for the various providers, newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank. This red one is storied, and it happens to be true that for this particular place, it looks like the strongest provider is Storied in this case. So if I click any of these links, this would open up to my Storied account. I could log in and start to use the Storied newspapers there. The same goes for if I'm inside the family history library or a family search center. Now, this is the same time period, a little bit different, right? He's later, he's back in Polk County. And so the newspapers that are available in that time period are a little different with a lot of overlap. And then when he is finally in Madison County, Iowa, at the end of his life, it's showing those records available. And you'll see that again, that overlap of the lines, because it's saying maybe he was in the previous county as late as 1910, or maybe he had moved to the later county as early as 1905. So that lets you get that opportunity to search in both places and see where you find him and narrow down where he was. All right, so to give you one other thought on where we might want to be looking for these records, I found it interesting to pull up Claude and be asking it there what it might help us do to find newspapers. So here I'll say, you are a professional genealogist. Help me find newspaper sources or repositories where I can find newspapers and obituaries about Madison County, Iowa. Now you'll notice that it's made small errors, right? Where it's kind of run the punctuation together before I intended it to. Usually that's fine, because if you're already going to paste this into an AI product, AI automatically figures out what you mean by that really well. And so if I am writing this into, say, a Word document because I'm actually writing out a report with this, then I would go into my AI speech product and change the mode, where I might want this mode to be, instead of straight voice to text, there's an option to change it to do other processing on it. And so you could switch this over to super mode, and then it says that it's going to do the language processing, and then it can do some after processing, as it's called, to figure out that the vocabulary makes sense and that it's semantically and syntactically correct. And so even it has an option to say, I want medical words because I'm doing something for a medical job. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that there are options in these various AI speech products, but I use this Parakeet one because I like how fast it is. All the text is local to my computer, and that for that reason is very fast. And so because I'm about to paste this or type this text into an AI product anyway, it doesn't really matter if there are typos like that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and submit that one, and let's see what we can do here. Little pause, need a little elevator music right about now as it goes. Really helps you wonder what's coming next, keeps you on the edge of your seat. Okay, local repositories. The Winterset Public Library Genealogy Collection. This is your premier local resource for Madison County research. Okay, that's great. That's a name I saw earlier, but AI gives me a little more color to this, because having, roughly compiled billions of pages into the AI model, it has some sense of what might be the most popular or the most extensive option out there. So that's good color to get on this. Okay, what else? Online newspaper articles, the Advantage Preservation Community History Archive, Chronicling America Newspaper Archive. This is now called Storied. That's a case where maybe the content that the AI has is a year or two behind. It's always catching up slowly. And so that the new name for newspaper archive has changed. And then you have different state level options. So I find all of these helpful options to go look at. And so I would want to jump back to my task list and then open up these different options and be adding these to my task list. So there's Winterset Public Library I've added. And if I can, I would even do the right click option here directly in the AI, right? I'm going to choose Goldie May, add link to tasks, and that would pop over that one. And then I should be able to go into, I'm trying not to click it too soon, but say I want to look at this newspaper State Historical Society, right click instead of clicking Goldie May, add link to tasks. And there I've got that iowa.gov option there. So, okay. So yeah, having received a little bit of color and direction from the AI product, that changes my plan a little bit. So now I might want to be looking at this Winterset one first and this iowa.gov one first or second, because it's considered a good one. And if it's free online, then great. If I don't have the subscription elsewhere, I want to try those ones first. And so I would go little by little through all of these and see what else I might find. And you could always push AI for more. So if you are looking for particular ethnicity or something, you could say, how about African American newspapers in the area? You could ask the AI you could say, just give me more. How about 10 more options? Is there anything you missed? Could you be more thorough? Are you sure you've gotten everything? We can push it a little bit and it would try to be more exhaustive, and we'll be looking for more options. Okay, so here are major Iowa African-American newspapers. We'd be able to go through those one by one and use those and add those to our list if I'm looking for African-American records and so on. So these are all options, and probably a lot of opportunity to push on AI to do more for us than we sometimes do. You could come across, sure, some hallucination that it's hallucinating some kind of record that's not out there or no longer exists, but it's worth checking. And as we're trying to be thorough and exhaustive in our search, I like that as an option to be looking that way. One other thing I'll show you is that as I'm up in this search bar, this which is a plus feature, I could come in here to Madison County, Iowa, and it will give me that same list that you saw in the catalog. But at the bottom, it has the option to search in other places. And so Wikipedia is a great one to be checking. One thing I like about Wolfram Alpha is that it brings up a little bit more structured data about a location you've chosen. And one really cool thing about that is if I put in county, it will show me the neighboring counties. So if I put in Madison County, Iowa, I think I do need to put the word county in, then it will show bordering counties. So if you're supposing, yeah, I'm not really finding my family member in Madison County, but I want to know what's nearby and I should be checking the boundary, but bordering counties, then that will give you that list right there. And then similarly, another place you might want to check is the family search images. This is the hot off the press data that's coming from all of the various scanners that are volunteers around the world working for Family Search to bring in more records. So if you bring in something like, I happen to know there aren't Madison, Iowa newspapers here, but suppose I do Iowa, and then I come down to, I'll do advanced search and record type newspapers, update. This would be records that have been recently scanned and have not yet been digitized by Family Search. So you could find different records that you're going to be scrolling through page by page as if you're looking at the film, right? But that's what you would do if the low-hanging fruit doesn't give you results, then you're going to want to be thorough and go into the harder to figure out options, but they might have the answers you're looking for. This is a good point at which you might want to come into your research log in Goldie May and turn on your automatic logging. And then as you go through your records and you're jumping around between pages, it would accumulate that list of all the pages you've found. So I could go, page by page, and I'm trying to find that internal table of contents to see how this page is laid out. And then maybe I've discovered, oh yeah, it's alphabetical. So with the Wilsons, I'm going to jump to the end of the page and see if he's there in the W's. And Goldie May would be accumulating this research log for that. And I might want to say, yes, he was here on page 170, or no, I looked where the Wilsons were and he was not in the Wilsons. So that was a negative result. And I want to know that I did not find it there so I don't come back looking for it again. Okay, I will end there. Great. I'm grateful for your time tonight. I hope this gave you a feel for the need and possibility of finding answers to your questions in newspapers. I hope Goldie May can help you in navigating and remembering and finding how and where you might find great newspaper options. And there's a lot more out there outside of Goldie May for newspapers that you'll find as you look more. So I hope that helps, and I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Richard. That was great. We did get a couple questions. Peter asked, how come I am not able to see the full transcription on my HP Chromebook?
I'm not familiar with whether this particular AI product is Mac only or if it's also PC, but there is a variety of these. A lot of them use the word Whisper in their product, and I think this may have come from an open source Whisper project that turned into all these products out there. So in theory, there should be an HP compatible Whisper product of some type that would allow you to do this kind of transcription. We have a PC that I use less that I believe has some transcription feature built into it, and the Mac has built-in transcription feature as well too, called Siri. But I find those to not be as helpful or as good a transcription as these newer ones that have come out. So hopefully you'll be able to find something similar that's more recent, I think.
Peter also asked if there will be a handout for this webinar.
I don't have a handout, but I will look forward to posting the YouTube channel, the YouTube video that will be posted afterwards.
Yeah, that'll be posted on Friday. So
fantastic. Okay.
The Santa Barbara County Genealogical Society was watching and asked, will old news from MyHeritage be added to the newspaper websites?
I do plan to add that. I think when I first saw oldnews.com come out, I think it was 1 or 2 Roots Techs ago in Roots Tech years. And at the time, it didn't have a listing of all its newspapers, but I think they've since updated it with a listing. And I would add that if possible to Goldie May for sure. I think that's a great source as well.
Awesome. They also asked, is it possible to export a project's content to a PDF or some other format?
Oh, great question. I don't yet have an option to export the project. I can export the research log. So if you're in the research log and scroll to the bottom, you can click export log and that would download. And then as you open that up in your, see, I think it's that one. This would open up in Numbers for me or Excel or Google Sheets. You'd find all the URLs and the data that I've saved here. I don't yet have an option to export the project. So that's a great add-on for me at some point, the tasks and the notes.
Awesome. And then Sandy Bernard asked, do you need an established tree to use Goldie May, or is this also useful to begin researching a tree?
You don't need an established tree. Yeah. So if you come into a new project and you will have to have signed in with your Family Search account, but you don't have to have done anything with it. And it could be a brand new Family Search account that's free and you've never used before. So here you could come and say, I'm looking for such and such. And you don't need to use the Family Search ID here. You could just say that I'm looking for Leonard Wilson and Sarah and Jane, and just add them by name there. And then any of the task lists, on the task list, any of the URLs that you look at could be pulled in here. And it's not, it's not genealogy specific. So if you want to save a recipe here and you want to put in all the ingredients that go into the chocolate chip cookie, those could go on the task list too, and it won't know the difference because it's just for any link online can be added to that task list. And so, yes, if you have no tree yet at all, or your tree is completely offline in one of those products, then you could still be using Goldie May for all the organization of the research process.
Awesome. And one more question for you from Mike. On your subway map, why didn't we see more census or newspaper coverage hints? For example, the first segment in Madison County for Leonard J. Wilson.
Oh, let's go back and look at that. Okay. All right, so it's trying to take a guess at what you already have a record for in your tree, which isn't exactly true. So if I roughly look at my sources on Leonard James Wilson, the subway map is not directly looking at the sources, it's looking at the details under the facts that have been saved to the tree. So, for example, it's saying that he already has an 1850 residence. Most likely, an 1850 residence comes from an 1850 census, but that's not guaranteed. If somebody had added an 1850 census for some other reason, then it would sort of cancel out that you might have been still looking for a census there. So any of these facts that appear in the residences down here would cause that dot to be lit up there. But now if you're missing any of those dots, that's where the gold ones appear. So there was an 1842 Canada census, and because he was living in Canada at birth and then later at age 20 lived in Illinois, and we don't know how long he was in one or the other, we don't know where he was during that 20-year period, then it's suggesting you might want to look at age 12 in the 1842 Canada census to see if he was still in Canada. Or alternatively, if you think he was in the US earlier, then he might appear as a tally mark in the 1840 census. There also happened to be Illinois censuses at that time period too. So it's showing those as 1835 and 1845. Now, as a minor, he is probably not appearing in these census records himself, but we could be looking for his father in these records and trying to figure out whether he was actually in Illinois earlier than we currently know.
Okay, I know I said one last question, but we got another one in that time. So real quick, Peter asked, does this research in newspapers relate to countries other than the US, such as Sweden, Canada, or Poland?
Yes, so if you are the newspaper listing I have does include other countries. I don't have a comprehensive list of all of them, but yes, England, Denmark, really a lot of Western Europe and Australia, New Zealand. A lot of these depend on the providers that I've brought into the list. So anything that you would find on Ancestry's collection, you would find here. Anything you find on the Family Search, you'd find here. So these are, similar to what you'd see. There's Ancestry things for Poland. So there's quite a bit. And then anything as far as censuses go, in the subway map, there are censuses for probably a dozen countries, and I think Mexico has one census too, if I'm remembering correctly. So all of the censuses that I know of and could find are in the subway tool. So if you were to go to the turn on the collection hints to see those newspapers, you would see those across any country that I know of as so far. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. This was very
Yeah.
helpful. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you will join us for our next webinar on October 22nd with James Tanner about using AI to translate handwritten documents. A recording of this webinar will be made available by next week. You can view that on our YouTube channel or on our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fh_webinars@byu.edu or follow our Facebook and Twitter. Thank you and have a wonderful week.